Where am I? How did I get here? Those are questions I've asked myself often since I left Caltech in 2006. Where am I? Well, right now I'm in Panajachel, Guatemala, on the shores of the beautiful lake Atitlan. I teach science, math, and technology at a K-8 school that focuses on giving a quality bilingual education to the local indigenous Mayan population. How did I get here? Well, that's a bit more complicated, but mostly I blame Joel Burdick. See, when I was at Caltech, I was on a certain track. PhD, postdoc, professor, tenured professor, astronaut, chairman, emeritus. Then I started volunteering in classrooms and I got hooked. I got into engineering because I like to solve problems and figure things out, and once I got hooked on the problem of how do you teach kids science so that they can really understand it, and the problems of the educational inequities in the US based on race and socioeconomic status, I thought these are problems that could really keep me hooked for a whole career. So my advisor, Joel, who, as you know, wears many hats, put on his "it's okay if your life is balanced during grad school" hat and approved of all kinds of education-related distractions for my research. Then once graduation got close, Joel put on his "you should do what makes you happy and fulfilled" hat, and bam, next thing I know, I'm in the Bronx teaching science to middle schoolers with mustaches bigger than mine. A job which, by the way, was often more humiliating than my heat transfer and thermodynamics qualifying exam, during which I actually cried and apologized for being so stupid. And then bam, 3 years later, here I am in Guatemala and I can't drink the water. But you know, it's hard to stay mad at Joel. You all know what I mean. See, Joel's the best boss I ever had. And I don't think a lot of people would say that about their thesis advisor. When I was at Caltech, the favorite pastime was to sit around and complain about your advisor. But I often felt left out of those conversations, especially once I said, my advisor's great. See, I always get the feeling that Joel really cared. Not just about the grants and the papers, but about the people. I learned a lot from Joel about how to inspire people to do great things by caring about them and encouraging them. Something I try to use in the classroom when I'm not thinking about covering their mouths with duct tape because they just won't stop talking. I've always felt that I got way more from Joel in training as a scientist and as a manager than he got from me in research results and journal articles. I hope I can make up the debt by doing some good with what I've learned. I know this isn't the typical landing spot for a Caltech PhD, but I definitely use what I learned at Caltech every day. I've brought some robotics to my classrooms in the Bronx and in Guatemala.
How did you maintain the controllability in the presence of non-holonomic constraints?
I've developed general feedback control strategies for undergraduate dynamical system using averaging theory.
I've tried to teach my kids what it is to really be a scientist. One quick example, in 2005, Hurricane Stan wiped out the sewage treatment plant here in Panajachel. And the human waste that's been flowing directly into that lake for the past 5 years has caused a bloom of toxic cyanobacteria that threatens the health of the people around the lake, and perhaps even more dangerously, all the tourist dollars that keep this area from the starvation that affects much of Guatemala. Incredibly, the government hasn't done anything about this, or next to nothing about it, mostly because definitive data that connects the bloom to the dumping of toxic waste hasn't yet been collected, and so the government's been able to weasel out of action. So I've been working with some teachers down here and some hydrologists and environmental health experts in the US to develop a testing plan, a water testing plan that my students can implement. In order to collect some data and maybe hold the government's feet to the fire a little bit. This is all just to say that all the mentoring that you did, Joel, to all those students and postdocs has really made a difference, and not always in some obvious ways and obvious places. So, Joel, here's to you. Thanks for being so supportive and open-minded, and for encouraging me to be the same. I'm grateful also to have a chance to publicly acknowledge how much you rock, and so thanks to the organizers of the conference, especially Anne-Marie, for putting this together and for letting me be a part of it without spending 2 months of my Guatemalan salary on a plane ticket. Oh, and by the way, I'm like married now, and she's like normal. It's awesome. So thanks for your advice on that too. Anyway, here's to the next 50. Muchísimas gracias y los mejores deseos para el futuro. Adiós.